Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a weekly political analysis show where I go over the week in politics that was and look ahead to the future. If you're new, please be sure to like the videos, and if you're a regular, please subscribe so you get alerts as to when new episodes come out. So I will begin this episode where I ended last episode. In reality, President Trump seems to be ready to restart the war in Iran if he has not already. I guess it depends on what you consider the war beginning means. The administration is viewing this as a new conflict, as the restart of the 60-day countdown where a reauthorization for use of military force is not required. In a letter to Congress dated on 10 July, it stated that July 7th strikes mark the beginning of military action consistent with my responsibility to protect Americans and the United States interests both at home and abroad. He also said the ceasefire was over, so I guess that means the 60-day countdown until September begins, when the clock will run out once again. Trump was threatening 20% charges on all cargo through the strait to cover, quote, any and all costs necessary to do the job of providing safety and security to this very volatile region of the world. He seemed to back away from that, and that's a good thing because the last few months he has been demanding toll-free access to the waterway, and now the idea is that he would impose tolls himself. It was completely unacceptable. Oil prices have spiked once again. Brent crude, which is the global benchmark, is now over $90 a barrel. It was over 85 last week, and it was 80 at the beginning of the week. And gas prices have already begun to rise again, and in fact, we are now north of $4 a gallon once again, nationwide. Separately, but still a problem, is Ukraine's attacks on Russian refineries. They have reduced global supply of gasoline as opposed to oil, pushing wholesale gas prices even higher. Sadly, though, 3 Americans died over the weekend, so please keep them in mind, their human cost in mind, as we seemingly head to war once again. So what can Congress do? Well, there's not very much that can do, but the midterm elections are coming up. They're only a couple of months away, and this will pressure Republicans into siding against the war. And as I said last episode, $4 gas on Election Day is not what they want. Back in June, the Senate voted to end the war 50-48, but this was mostly a symbolic vote. The House had already passed another one, 215-208, but they are once again, that is also symbolic because any restrictions regarding the war would be vetoed by the president. Speaking of the war, as I talked about last week, Republicans are seeking to pass $95 billion for the war in Iran and the Save America Act. The goal will be to pass it with reconciliation, the same thing that they passed the One Big Beautiful Bill with last summer, and it was originally supposed to be $350 billion. That's how much the administration requested a couple of months ago. There is $60 billion for Armed Services Committee, $12 billion for Agriculture to offset higher food prices, $10 billion to the House Administration Committee for election funding related bills, and then $13 billion for Intelligence Committee related project to undisclosed classified projects. Republicans will need to pass this through the House of Representatives, where they have a narrow majority. Representative Nancy Mace for example, has already come out against it because there are currently no plans to offset this $95 billion boondoggle with implementing cuts in other government departments. And my guess is this form of a bill will end up passing the House, even if they do not find other savings. However, as I said last week, the problem is really in the Senate. The $95 billion is not really the issue here. It's the SAVE Act inside the $95 billion. Using a process called reconciliation, they cannot stuff anything in there that is non-fiscal policy related, as I talked about in my last episode. Looks like they will vote on this thing this week, and I would expect major edits. If not this week, it will be once it gets to the Senate. They only have until the end of this week, July 24th, before they leave for the summer recess. And a big problem for the Senate is because of Mitch McConnell's absence means that Democrats and Republicans have the same number of committee seats, and that means until he returns, they are not going to be able to pass reconciliation bills. Moving on, but sticking with Congress, I have some fantastic news from the House of Representatives, and I was not even aware that this was on the agenda, and the House of Representatives have voted to make daylight saving time permanent. This means that we would spring forward in March, and then we would never fall back again in November. It would mean that darker mornings, but it would mean longer evenings. The other option on the table, not what Congress has passed, is we do permanent standard time, where we fall back in November and we never spring ahead. Health advocates are usually against permanent daylight saving time for health reasons, while businesses are supportive of it for business reasons. Both sides want one thing, though, and that is an end to the biannual clock changes. For myself, at this point, I really don't care which one we do, whether it's permanent DST or permanent standard time. I think we need to pick one and stick with it. Or another interesting idea would be to do where you spring forward 30 minutes and then that's it. The problem with that is business wouldn't like that because that would put us off track with countries like Mexico and Canada and much of the rest of the world. As for the bill itself, it now goes to the Senate, which has passed this before. The bill could pass, and it would have to pass before Congress's session ends in December. The Senate passed a bill unanimously in 2022 to end DST, and I believe last year they implemented a bill to do permanent standard time. And this is a pretty bipartisan issue. In the House, it passed with a veto-proof majority of 308 to 117. Democratic leadership did support the bill. 95 Democrats rebelled and voted against it, as did 24 Republicans, but it was nowhere near enough to stop the bill. President Trump has indicated he would sign the bill, and that would make me very happy, and I would be happy to say I approve of the president if he did that, but it probably wouldn't be for very long. Currently, states can choose to permanent standard time, but they cannot choose permanent daylight time. Arizona and Hawaii are on permanent standard time, and they would get exemptions in the bill. 19 states have implemented laws to make DST permanent, but they cannot take effect until Congress allows it. So that's interesting. Hopefully we see that happen before Congress ends. If not, then it could theoretically be opened up in the next Congress if Democrats take over. I mean, even if Republicans retain control of all the branches of government, then it could still be done. So this would be an issue, I think. This has definitely been something that where we've seen the most amount of movement in recent years, because usually a bill is brought up around daylight savings, whether it be in March or in November, and then we don't hear about it again. So the fact that it has passed, two different bills have passed the chamber, both chambers, is a good sign. South Carolina, meanwhile, their new senator, Darlene Graham-Nardone, will replace the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who died at age 71 about 2 weeks ago. This term ends in less than 6 months, as I said before, and as of this recording, she has not announced if she will run for a full term, but she might. A decision would have to come pretty fast. Trump has given her his full endorsement, so I don't see why she wouldn't win a Republican primary. The filing period begins tomorrow on July 21st, and there will be a brief campaign that will end on August 11th, assuming there is no runoff. Representatives Nancy Mace, Russell Fry, and former Representative Mark Sanford have all expressed interest, but it would be an uphill battle against the Trump-endorsed candidate. Representative Ralph Norman, who has the endorsement of some sitting senators, has already announced that he would run. The strange thing with the deaths of politicians is that when you're looking to replace them, you have to do two things at the same time. Very firstly, you have to acknowledge their death and you have to mourn. If you skip over that, then you're seen as heartless and evil. But meanwhile, everyone does this, and everyone denies they do it, but they all do it, is they have to privately maneuver to take over. It's gross, but that's how the game is played. Still, though, this is a safe Republican seat. It's probably going to be a little bit closer than it would have been if Lindsey Graham had been the nominee, but Democrats really do not have any chance of flipping this seat, and they should spend their resources in states that they poll better in, like Texas and Alaska, and even Iowa and Ohio. And lastly, I will end with a speech from the White House President Trump gave on Thursday. It focused on the 2020 election, and he unveiled a new government website he claimed has newly declassified documents detailing vulnerabilities in the nation's elections infrastructure from 2018 and 2020, both elections that he and his party did very badly in. The thing is, vulnerabilities are usually not evidence of interference. So what does election infrastructure mean? He was primarily targeting two things, the voting machines and the people who are eligible to vote. He declared that Americans were blatantly lied to about the security of our election infrastructure, including electronic voting machines and ballot counting systems, dishonest almost all. So as for the people, he was talking about illegal immigrants, stating that Democrat states refuse to share their voter files, that the real number is actually much higher than that, yet this is a limited analysis found more than 250,000 foreigners illegally registered to vote. Put together, these disclosures reveal an election system so broken and so vulnerable that no one can possibly defend it. It is not defensible. Democratic leaders blasted the address. As always, Schumer and Jeffries said that it was to distract the nation from the economic woes. It also would certainly make sense that this is the case, and I think it's more likely that this is about the pressure to pass the Save America Act. As I've said before, the SAVE Act will never pass, so this is a big waste of time. He also lauded his achievements like his tax cuts, the new Trump accounts, the tariffs, the capturing of Maduro, and so much more. Usually, though, when a president has an address like this, there is a call to action. He called on Congress to pass the Save America Act, of course, but he did not ask for new federal dollars to upgrade the nation's election infrastructure, which I believe is over 15 and in some cases 20 years old. And as I have said before, I believe we need voter ID, and you should be required to present an ID not only when you vote, but when you register to vote. But the Save America Act makes it much more difficult than even I think is reasonable. Since every time Trump opens his mouth, he says something that repulses swing voters, this address is really only going to go down badly. And in fact, it has only gone down badly. And this is really an attempt to energize his base. And in fact, I don't see how this is to his benefit. In fact, many networks vowed not to air the speech live, and he threatened to revoke the licenses of ABC and NBC over it, which I can't imagine would be legal. And if it somehow did succeed, then that would be something a dictator would do. So regarding election fraud, my big question, overarching question, always goes back to if the elections are always rigged against him, how did he win in 2016 and 2024? So that's all for now. Thank you for tuning in. As always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.